I only said her name because I was scared. I never thought Professor Reyes would put her hand on my waist and say, "She is telling the truth." That is where this story starts, not with a classroom or a lecture or a grade. It starts in a dark hallway on the east side of campus at 9 at night, with a guy who would not take no for an answer, and me saying the first name that came to my head. The wrong name. The most terrifying name on that entire campus. The name that changed everything. Let me back up. My name is Jess. I am a second-year student at Caldwell University. I study literature. I like old books and strong coffee, and I am the kind of person who sits in the back of the classroom and takes very good notes and hopes nobody calls on her. I am not dramatic. I do not cause scenes. I do not make things complicated. Until I did. Professor Elena Reyes taught advanced literary theory. She was 34. I was 21. She had been at Caldwell for 6 years, and in that time she had built a reputation that traveled faster than her course syllabi. She was brilliant in a way that felt almost unfair. She read things once and remembered them forever. She could take apart a paragraph in front of a full lecture hall and make everyone in the room feel like they had never really read before. She was also the coldest person I had ever been in a room with. Not cruel. She was never cruel. But she had this distance that felt deliberate, like a wall she had built and maintained with great care. She did not make small talk. She did not linger after class. She did not have office hours where she asked how your weekend was. She asked about your work. Only your work. Everything else she looked through like it was not there. Students called her the Ice Queen. Not to her face, never to her face. But in the dining hall and in the library and in group chats at midnight, that was what she was. I was in her Thursday seminar, 12 students around a table and Professor Reyes at the head of it. I had signed up for the class because the reading list was exactly what I wanted, and because I thought I could handle sitting near someone intimidating for 90 minutes once a week. I could handle it, barely, but I could. What I could not handle was Daniel. Daniel was also in the seminar. He was the kind of guy who talked too much in class and thought everything he said was interesting. He had started paying attention to me around week 3. At first, it was just sitting next to me. Then it was texting me things I had not asked for. Then it was waiting by the door after class and walking with me whether I wanted company or not. I told him I was not interested. Twice. Clearly. He nodded like he understood, and then the next week did the exact same things again. I did not know how to make it stop without making it a big thing. I was not good at big things. I was the person who sat in the back and took good notes and hoped nobody called on her, remember? The night everything changed was a Thursday. Seminar had ended late because we had gotten into a debate about unreliable narrators, and Professor Reyes had let it run. I had stayed after to return a book I had borrowed from the seminar shelf, and by the time I got out into the hallway, it was past 9, and the east wing was mostly empty. Daniel was waiting in the hallway. He said he had waited to walk me home. He said it like he was doing me a favor. I said I was fine and started walking. He walked with me. I told him again I was fine. He kept talking. I stopped walking and turned around and said, "Daniel, I do not want you to walk me home. Please stop." He took a step closer and his whole energy changed in a way that made my stomach drop. And that was when I said it. I said I was sorry. I should have told him sooner. I am seeing someone. He asked who. My brain went completely blank. I looked back down the hallway. The light was on in the seminar room. The only person still in this wing of the building at 9 at night. I said, Professor Reyes, I do not know why. I do not know what part of my brain thought that was a reasonable thing to say. It was the worst possible answer. It was a lie that was going to get me in trouble the moment anyone examined it for even 1 second. Professors and students, the ethics policy, the power difference. Every sensible thought I had ever had told me that was a terrible idea. But I was scared, and I said it, and it was already out there. Daniel stared at me. Then, from behind me, I heard heels on the hallway floor. I turned around. Professor Reyes was walking toward us from the seminar room. She had her bag over one shoulder and her coat folded over her arm, and she looked the same way she always looked, perfectly composed, completely unreadable. She had heard. I did not know how much. But she had heard something, because she was looking at Daniel with an expression that I had seen her use on students who came to class unprepared, and it was not a comfortable expression to be on the receiving end of. She stopped next to me. She put her hand on my waist. She said, "She is telling the truth." Then she looked at Daniel and said, "The walkway to the east gate closes in 10 minutes, and she suggested he use it." Daniel left. Fast. I stood in that hallway and I could not breathe. Her hand was still at my waist. Then she removed it and stepped back and looked at me with that unreadable face and said nothing for what felt like a very long time. She said I should not walk home alone at this hour. I said I did not live far. She said she knew. She had seen my file when she was scheduling office hours, and my emergency contact listed an address 2 streets from campus. I did not know what to do with the fact that she had noticed that. She said she was leaving anyway, and she would walk with me to the main gate. I said okay. We walked out of the east wing and across the main courtyard, and she did not say anything about what had just happened. She talked about the seminar, about the debate we had gotten into about unreliable narrators. She said my point about the reader filling the gaps had been the most interesting one in the room. I said thank you. She said she meant it. At the main gate, she stopped and said goodnight and walked in the other direction. I stood there for a moment, and then I walked home, and I sat on my bed, and I tried to understand what had just happened. She had played along. She had not corrected me. She had not pulled me aside and told me to never do that again and that I had no idea what the ethics policy said, and I was lucky she was in a good mood. She had just put her hand on my waist and told Daniel I was telling the truth. I could not figure out why. The next Thursday, I came to seminar and everything was the same. Professor Reyes at the head of the table, the reading on the board, the same quiet authority filling the room. She called on me twice. Both times she listened to what I said without expression and then moved the discussion forward in a way that built on my point without making a big thing of it. Daniel did not sit next to me. After class, I was the last to leave again. Not on purpose. I had a question about the essay prompt. I asked it. She answered. And then she said she was walking to the east gate, and I could walk with her if I was going that direction. I was not going that direction. I said yes anyway. That was how it started. Not with a conversation about what had happened in the hallway. Not with any acknowledgement of the lie, or the hand on my waist, or any of it. Just her saying she was going that direction, and me going with her even though I was not. We walked across campus and she talked about the essay prompt, and I asked follow-up questions, and somewhere in the middle of it, I realized I had been walking for 15 minutes and forgotten to be nervous. That happened 3 more times over the following 2 weeks. After seminar, she would mention she was heading out, and I would end up walking with her. It was never announced. It was never planned out loud. It just happened. What also happened was that she started being present in other ways. I noticed it slowly. She started appearing in places I was, not in a way that was strange. Caldwell is not a big campus. But she would come into the library cafe where I usually worked in the afternoons and get coffee, and sometimes she would sit 2 tables away. She never came over. She just was there. Once I was in the quad eating lunch, and I looked up and she was crossing the quad in the opposite direction, and she saw me and nodded. Just a nod. But she saw me. One afternoon, a group of girls from another class were being loud and unkind about something near my usual table in the library. Not about me directly, just that kind of unkind that fills the space and makes everything uncomfortable. Professor Reyes was at the librarian's desk, returning something, and she looked over at that table with the look she used on unprepared students, and the group went quiet and left within 2 minutes. She did not look at me after. She just returned her book and went. But I noticed. I started paying attention to when she was nearby, and I realized it was more than coincidence. She was checking on me. Quietly, from a distance, in ways that were impossible to call out or question. The Ice Queen professor was keeping an eye on me, and she was doing it so carefully that nobody would have been able to say anything about it. I did not know what to do with that. I also did not know what to do with the fact that I was starting to look for her when she was not there. The problem came around week 6. There was a girl in my literature program named Cora who had a lot of opinions about everything, and a very specific interest in Professor Reyes. Not romantic, or maybe a little romantic, but mostly she collected information about Professor Reyes the way some people collect trivia. Who she was outside of campus, where she had studied, whether she had ever been seen with anyone. Cora heard something. I do not know how. Campus gossip travels faster than Wi-Fi. She pulled me aside in the dining hall and said she had heard I was somehow connected to Professor Reyes, and she wanted to know what that meant. I said I did not know what she was talking about. Cora said Daniel had told people that I had claimed to be dating Professor Reyes to get rid of him. My stomach dropped. Cora said she did not believe it, of course. She said it was obviously a lie I had made up to scare him off. She said she just wanted me to know it was going around so I could correct it before it got back to the professor and caused a problem for me. She was being nice about it, genuinely trying to help. But the look on her face when she said, obviously a lie, told me she was also very interested in whether it was. I went to Professor Reyes's office that afternoon. First time I had ever gone to her office outside of scheduled hours. I knocked and she said, come in, and I came in, and she looked up from her desk and waited. I told her what Cora had said, that it was going around, that Daniel had talked. That I was sorry, I was going to correct it, I just wanted her to know before someone else told her. She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, close the door and sit down. I closed the door. I sat down. She folded her hands on the desk, and she said she already knew. She had heard 2 days ago. One of the other professors had mentioned it to her in a way that was trying to be friendly, and was actually just telling her something they thought would embarrass her. I started to apologize. She stopped me. She said she was not embarrassed. She said what I had done in that hallway was a sensible response to a situation where I felt unsafe, and she was not going to pretend otherwise. She said the question was what I wanted to do about it now. I said I could tell people it was a lie, that I had panicked, that nothing was real. She looked at me very carefully. She said that was one option. I asked what the other option was. She was quiet for a moment. She said she had been asking herself for several weeks why she had played along in that hallway instead of simply correcting the situation. She said she was a practical person, and she did not do things without reasons, and she had been honest with herself about what the reason was. I did not say anything. I was afraid to say anything. She said the reason was that she had wanted to, that she had been looking for a reason to spend more time near me since about week 4 of the seminar, when I had said something about the space between words mattering as much as the words themselves. She said she had thought about that sentence more than was professionally appropriate. She said she was telling me this so I could make an informed decision, not because she expected anything, not because she was asking for anything, but because she thought I deserved to have the real information before I decided what story to tell. I sat in that office chair and I could hear my own heartbeat. I asked her what she wanted. She said she wanted to be honest about the fact that she was not entirely neutral in this situation, but that whatever I decided, she would handle it. If I wanted to correct the story, she would back me up. If I wanted to let it be for now, she would not say anything either way. She was not going to make this my problem to manage alone. I looked at her hands on the desk, perfectly still. The same control she brought to everything. I said I did not want to correct it. She looked at me. I said I was not sure what I wanted exactly, but I knew I did not want to go back to the version of things where she was just the professor at the head of the table and I was the student in the back corner. She said that was honest. I said she had told me to be. Something very small changed on her face. Not a smile exactly, something close to one. She said we needed to be careful. She said the ethics policy at Caldwell was clear about faculty and current students. She said she was not going to do anything that put me in a difficult position, academically or professionally. She said if anything was going to happen, it had to wait until the semester was over and I was no longer enrolled in her class. I said that was fair. She said it was also going to be longer than that. She said she had been thinking about requesting a department transfer to the graduate program, which would make her faculty status separate from my undergraduate enrollment. She said she had been thinking about it for reasons that had existed before me, but that she was being honest that the timing had something to do with me now too. I did not know what to say to the fact that she had thought about me enough to factor me into a career decision. She said in the meantime, nothing would change on the outside. She would be my professor. She would grade my work the same way she graded everyone's. She would not treat me differently in the classroom. She said outside the classroom was a different matter. I asked what that meant. She said it meant she was going to keep walking me to the gate after seminars, and she was going to keep an eye on Daniel, and she was going to make sure that nobody on this campus made me feel unsafe again. Not as my girlfriend, just as someone who had decided I was under her protection. I said that sounded like something out of a very old book. She said she had read a lot of very old books. I laughed. It came out before I meant it to. She looked at me like the laugh had done something to her composure that she was filing away to examine later. She said I should go. She had papers to read. I went. The weeks after that were quiet on the outside and very loud on the inside. Nothing changed in the seminar room. She called on me the same number of times she called on everyone. She marked my essays with the same red pen and the same precise comments she gave to all 12 students. She was fair to the point of being mathematical about it. Outside the classroom, she was different. She started texting me. Not often. Not about anything that could be called romantic. Things like, "The east wing was locked tonight, so use the north exit," or "The cafe in the library closes early on Wednesdays." Or once, late at night, she sent me an article about the specific essay topic I was struggling with and said she thought it might help and not to stay up too late. I read that last message 4 times. I texted back thank you, and she said good night, and that was all it was, and somehow it was everything. We still walked after seminars. Sometimes we talked about the reading, sometimes about other things. She told me she had grown up in a small city 200 miles away and had come to Caldwell on a scholarship at 17 and had never really left. She told me she had always found it easier to understand characters in books than people in rooms. I told her I understood that completely. She asked about my family. I told her about my mother, who thought I should have studied something practical, and my father, who had read me novels at bedtime until I was 12, and I thought that explained a lot about the choices I had made. She said she thought it explained a lot about why I understood the space between words. I told her she had remembered that. She said she remembered everything I said in that seminar room. I did not know how to respond to that, so I did not respond at all, and she did not push it. The semester ended in December. On the last day of seminar, she handed back our final essays and said the same things to the class that she always said on the last day. That she hoped we would keep reading carefully, that the work we had done was good work, that we should be proud of it. After the others left, I stayed. I was not sure why. I just was not ready to leave. She was erasing the board. She said, without turning around, that she had submitted her department transfer request that morning, that it had been approved. Starting in January, she would be in the graduate program only. I said, "Congratulations." She turned around. She said the semester was over. I said I knew. She said I was no longer her student. I said I knew that too. She looked at me for a moment. Then she put down the eraser and she walked over and she said, "Then I can do this." She put her hand on my face very gently, the same way she did everything, careful and precise and completely certain. She said she had wanted to do that since October. I leaned into her hand and she looked at me like she was reading something she had been trying to understand for a long time and had finally found the translation. I said I thought she had a lot of very old books to reference. She said she was working from a new text. We walked out of that seminar room together for the last time. And this time, when we reached the main gate, she did not go in the other direction. She walked me all the way home. At my door, she said goodnight the same way she always said goodnight. But she stayed for a moment. She said she was aware this was new, that she did not do new things easily, that she was going to be careful with me, and she was going to need me to be patient with her sometimes when she went quiet or held things at a distance. I said I could do that. She said she knew. That was why she was standing at my door instead of her own. I told her she was allowed to come inside if she wanted. She said not tonight. Tonight she was doing things carefully. I smiled. She saw the smile, and something happened to her composure again. That small, almost thing near her mouth that was not quite a smile but was close. She said, "Good night, Jess." I said, "Good night, Elena." First time I had used her name. She noticed. She turned and walked down the street, and I watched her go, and I thought about the hallway on the east side of campus at 9 at night, and me saying her name to a boy who would not leave me alone. The worst possible thing to say at the worst possible moment. Except it was not. She came to the door 2 days later with coffee she had gotten from the cafe near her apartment because she had remembered I said I liked that one specifically. She did not say she had remembered. She just handed it to me. I took it, and I stepped aside, and she came in. We sat at my kitchen table, and she told me about the new graduate seminar she was designing, and I told her about the book I was in the middle of, and it was easy, in a way I had not expected. Not because she was easy. She was not easy. She was precise and careful, and sometimes she said things that were blunt in a way that took a moment to land. But she was honest, and she paid attention, and when I talked, she listened like what I was saying mattered. That was not something I had experienced very much. The spring semester started, and she was in the graduate building, and I was in the undergraduate program, and there was no overlap that anyone could question. She was not my professor anymore. She was just Elena, and I was just Jess. Two people who had started in the most sideways way possible and were figuring out how to be in the same place on purpose. Cora figured it out. Of course she did. She saw us walking together near the North Quad one afternoon, and she stopped and stared, and then she came over and looked between us. She said, "So it was not a lie." Elena looked at her with the Ice Queen look. Cora left immediately. Elena looked at me. I was trying not to laugh. She said campus gossip was extremely undignified. I said I had heard that about it. She sighed, but there was something underneath it. That thing I had started to learn to find. The warmth she kept so far inside that most people never got close enough to feel it. I was close enough. That was the thing about all of it, when I looked back at it later. The lie in the hallway, and the hand on my waist, and the walks to the gate, and the texts late at night, and the coffee she brought because she had remembered. The thing that tied it all together. She had wanted to be close enough. She had been looking for a reason for longer than I had known. She had been noticing me before I ever thought to notice her. The Ice Queen professor who looked through people like they were not there had been looking at me and waiting. And when I had accidentally given her a reason, she had taken it with both hands. Not recklessly. She never did anything recklessly, but deliberately. One small, careful thing at a time. The cold ones are not cold all the way through. I know that now. Some of them are just very careful about who they let in. And once you are in, once you are actually inside that distance they keep around themselves, what you find there is warmer than anything. She still walks me home, not every night. We are both busy people, and she has late seminars and I have deadlines. But on Thursday nights, after I finish my study session in the library, and she finishes whatever she is working on in her office, we walk out of the East Gate together, and she talks about the things she is reading, and I talk about the things I am writing. And it feels like something that was always supposed to happen. She told me once, late in the spring, that she had been alone for a long time before me. Not unhappily alone. She was not someone who needed company constantly, but the particular kind of alone that comes from never letting anyone stay. She said she was glad I had been scared in that hallway. I said I was glad Daniel would not take no for an answer. She said that was a very dark silver lining. I said I was a literature student. We liked complicated things. She looked at me then, the way she had looked at me in the seminar room when I said something that hit the right note. Like she was filing it away, like I was a text she intended to keep coming back to. I think she meant to keep coming back. I think I did too.